In life, some stories break us. Others remind us we can rise again. This is one of them. I'm Thomas Reed, and this is Behind Closed Doors. It was supposed to be just another business trip. March 12, 2012. Flight 262. Southwest Air Connect, Houston to Phoenix. A routine 2-hour flight. Daniel Cooper kissed his wife, Melissa, goodbye that morning. His sons, Ethan, 4, and Liam, barely 6 months old, were still asleep. Daniel promised he'd be home for dinner. He never made it at 7:43 a.m. Somewhere over New Mexico, Flight 262 vanished from radar. No distress call, no signal, no explanation. The wreckage was discovered 2 weeks later, deep in the unforgiving desert, scattered like confetti after a storm. The scene was carnage. Twisted metal, scorched earth, but no identifiable bodies. The authorities were baffled. No survivors. No black box. No answers. But for the families, only silence. Melissa collapsed under the weight of the tragedy. Her husband gone. Her life shattered. In her grief, she clung to the only thing left. Survival. The media called it one of the greatest aviation mysteries in U.S. history. But what they didn't know was that Daniel Cooper was alive. Broken, disoriented, and miles away from everything he knew. And he remembered nothing. 6 months later, a cold rain poured over the streets of Seattle. Among the homeless, the addicts, and the forgotten, wandered a man with haunted eyes and no name. His face reflected back from a shattered storefront window. Bruised, sunken cheeks, overgrown beard, clothes in tatters. But beneath the dirt and despair, fragments of Daniel Cooper remained. The fall from the skies had stolen his memory, leaving behind only shadows and nightmares. Sometimes, faint flashes came. A woman's face, the echo of a baby crying, the smell of home. But they slipped, away like smoke. On the other side of the country, Melissa struggled to hold her family together. The life insurance money helped, at first. But grief doesn't pay the bills. Victor Price entered her life like a storm disguised as calm. Former military, strong, composed, charming in public. He promised stability, safety. But behind closed doors, Victor was a different man. The neighbors whispered, but no one dared intervene. Ethan's laughter faded. Liam's cries were silenced by fear. Melissa's eyes lost their light. Meanwhile, the man once known as Daniel Cooper scavenged for food, fighting off street gangs, sleeping beneath broken overpasses, just another invisible soul forgotten by the world. But fate wasn't finished with him yet. 3 years later, Dallas, Texas. The Cooper home, once filled with warmth, now stood like a mausoleum. Behind its brick walls, Victor's control tightened. His charm was for the outside world, but inside, the cracks were impossible to hide. Melissa, now 36, bore the weight of choices she never wanted to make. Her eyes, once bright with southern warmth, carried permanent shadows. The ring on her finger sparkled, but it was a shackle. Victor's rules were simple. Obey. Stay. Silent. Smile in public. Ethan, now 7, had learned to hide in plain sight. His drawings, once colorful, turned dark. Images of falling planes, broken families, faceless men. His teachers noticed, but their concern was buried under bureaucracy. Liam, barely a toddler, grew up knowing only Victor's voice, harsh, commanding, void of tenderness. But Victor's cruelty wasn't just a domestic terror, it was strategic. What Melissa never discovered was his deep connection to the world of aviation. Security contracts, insider knowledge, and hidden in encrypted files, details of Flight 262's final moments. Daniel Cooper's death wasn't fate. It was engineer Asterisk, but Daniel wasn't dead. Asterisk on the rainy streets of Seattle. He sat outside a diner, numb fingers holding a crumpled photograph he found in a donation box. It showed Melissa and the boys, a family he couldn't place, faces that stabbed at his broken mind. Asterisk A. Storm rumbled above. For the first time in years, a flicker of memory sparked in the void. Asterisk, the man with no name, began to remember. The rain fell harder that night, slicing through Seattle's alleys like needles. Daniel staggered beneath a flickering street lamp, clutching the photograph tighter. The woman's face, the children. His heart pounded, but his mind waged war against itself. The memories bled in, unfamiliar, fragmented, sharp as glass. Melissa, Ethan, Liam. The names pulsed inside his skull like buried echoes. He saw flashes, a warm kitchen, a child's toy, the hum of an airplane cabin, then flames, screams, metal twisting midder. The feeling of falling. Daniel collapsed onto the sidewalk, gasping for air. His reflection stared back from a puddle, unfamiliar, worn down by years on the streets. But beneath the grime, his eyes told the truth. He was Daniel Cooper, and someone had stolen everything from him. Across the country, in Dallas, the facade of normalcy crumbled further. Ethan, now 10, had become withdrawn, his eyes dull with suspicion. Liam, confused by the tension, clung to his mother. But Melissa was a shell of the woman she once was. Victor tightened his grip. Paranoia simmered beneath his cold exterior. His military connections whispered threats, reminding him the past had to stay buried, but destiny had other plans. The man they all believed dead was alive. And with every fragment of memory that returned, Daniel's rage simmered closer to the surface. He would reclaim his name. He would expose the truth. The ones who destroyed his life would pay. The highway stretched endlessly, cutting through states like scars on the land. Daniel hitchhiked south, a ghost drifting toward the fragments of his old life. Each mile brought more clarity. Names, faces, voices from the past. His memory wasn't whole, but enough pieces had clicked into place. Melissa, the boys, and Victor. The memory of the crash remained jagged. Fire, screams, the jolt of impact. But there was more. A conversation. Fragments of words. In the airport, a tall man, military build, sharp eyes. Victor. It hadn't been fate. It had been orchestrated. The realization clawed at Daniel's chest as the Texas border welcomed him home. His beard was grayer now, his body lean from years of struggle, but beneath the weathered skin burned something raw purpose. In Dallas, Victor paced the polished floors of their suburban home, his paranoia growing. His military connections had informed him. A John Doe matching Daniel's description had been flagged in Seattle, asking questions. Victor's grip on Melissa tightened. His words, colder, more threatening. The past stays buried. You understand me? But cracks widened. Ethan, older now, had been listening, reading between the lies, questioning the shadows that filled their house. His school counselor suspected abuse, but intervention never came. Liam grew silent, his young eyes witnessing more than any child should. Daniel stood on the outskirts of Dallas by sundown, staring at the distant skyline. The air was thick with heat and betrayal. He was home. But his family wasn't safe, and the storm had only just begun. Nightfall cloaked Dallas in quiet suburban stillness. But for Daniel, every driveway, every window, every flickering porch light burned with uncertainty. He was a stranger in the city he once called home, standing across the street from the house. Hidden beneath the low branches of an oak tree, he saw them. Melissa, framed in the kitchen window, her shoulders slumped, her movements robotic. The years had etched lines across her face, but she was unmistakable, the same woman from the crumpled photograph, from his fragmented memories. And the boys. Ethan, now taller, walked like a boy burdened with secrets. His face was tight with distrust, his eyes scanning shadows as though danger lurked in every corner. Liam, smaller, fragile, trailed behind, clinging to his mother's side. Victor wasn't in sight, but Daniel didn't need to see him. The energy in the house, tense, heavy, screamed of control, of fear. A police cruiser idled a few blocks down, unmoving. Daniel recognized the pattern, protection, or surveillance. Either way, Victor had influence. Maybe more than Daniel. Realized. His fists clenched. Every instinct urged him to charge in, to reclaim his place, but something stopped him. The broken pieces weren't ready to fit together. Not yet. Instead, Daniel retreated into the darkness, gathering scraps of information. Old contacts, public records, whispers on the street. Victor Price, decorated veteran-turned-security consultant, with ties to corporate aviation contracts. And, buried beneath legal paperwork and insurance claims, the first real hint of sabotage. The crash hadn't been an accident, but proving it would require a dangerous game. Daniel moved like a shadow through the underbelly of Dallas. Abandoned warehouses, street corners, forgotten bars. Every contact, every whisper, unraveled more of Victor's carefully built lies. The paperwork was clean. Insurance settlements, legal guardianship, even sealed investigation reports from Flight 262's crash. But beneath the polished surface, connections to shady aviation contracts, security firms with military roots, and payments that didn't add up. Victor Price hadn't stumbled into Melissa's life by chance. The timeline painted a chilling picture. 2 weeks before the crash, Victor was assigned to an aviation security assessment at Southwest Air Connect. Within days, mechanical failures were reported, maintenance was skipped, and paperwork vanished. Sabotage. Calculated, intentional, and Daniel had been the target. Meanwhile, at home, Melissa unraveled quietly. Bruises on her wrists, silent. Apologies behind fearful eyes. Ethan, now 11, watched it all, his young heart hardening. Daniel couldn't stay hidden forever. He needed proof. Revenge alone wasn't enough. But Victor's paranoia grew. Security cameras around the house. Private investigators tailing suspicious. Faces. His instincts whispered that something from the past had resurfaced. Then, the unexpected twist. A confidential whistleblower, an ex-employee from the airline, reached out to Daniel's underground contact. The man carried damning evidence. Altered maintenance reports, falsified flight data, covert payments, all leading to Victor Price. But before Daniel could meet him, the whistleblower turned up dead. Found in an alleyway. Execution style. The message was clear. Stop digging, or be buried next. The news of the whistleblower's murder hit Daniel like a blade to the chest. It wasn't just sabotage. It was calculated erasure. Anyone who dared expose Victor paid the price in blood. But Daniel had survived worse. He wasn't the broken, shell from Seattle streets anymore. Armed with fragments of evidence and burning rage, he launched his first quiet strike, hacking into public records, leaking anonymous tips, shadowing Victor's movements. Each thread revealed more. Off-the-books payments, false security credentials, classified military contacts shielding Victor from legal scrutiny. But there was more. Victor had been watching Melissa for months before the crash. Surveillance. Disguised as corporate security. A predator in plain sight. Melissa, blinded by grief and desperation, never saw the trap close around her. And now, she was caught, legally bound, emotionally shattered. Ethan sensed the shift. The bruises. The whispers. the silent stares at dinner. At 11, his instincts screamed that their home was a cage. And Victor held the key. Daniel's fist clenched as he watched from a distance, hidden behind parked cars, studying his own family like a ghost haunting his past life. But it wasn't just about exposing Victor anymore. It was about survival. Whispers in Dallas grew louder, someone digging into Victor's past. And Victor was listening. Daniel had drawn first blood in the shadows, but the real battle was coming. And this time, only one of them would walk away. The confrontation wasn't supposed to happen like this. Daniel had planned every move, stay hidden, collect evidence, unravel Victor's empire quietly. But fate never plays fair. It happened on a gray Texas afternoon. The school parking lot buzzed with parents, minivans, and forgotten conversations. Daniel, hidden behind a utility truck, watched his sons emerge. Ethan taller now, protective of his younger brother. Liam still small, wary, clinging to his backpack. Then Victor's truck pulled up. His presence, even from a distance, radiated control. His eyes sharp, scanning, always calculating. But this time, they landed on Daniel. Recognition flickered, just a spark, but it was enough. Victor's expression froze. His confident stride faltered for a split second. Daniel stepped forward, instincts overtaking logic. The years of misery, the pain, the stolen life, it surged like wildfire. His voice cracked through the hum of traffic. Victor. Victor's jaw clenched, a venomous smile creeping across his face. You're supposed to be dead. Daniel's fists trembled, but it wasn't fear. It was fury, raw and years in the making. The moment shattered the illusion. Ethan, watching from across the lot, saw his mother's photo hidden in Daniel's worn jacket. Recognition sparked. Questions collided with confusion. Victor, ever the tactician, placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, whispering poison beneath his breath. Stay away, or your family suffers. Before Daniel could respond, Victor vanished into the crowd, dragging the boys along, a master manipulator playing a deadly long game. But now, the lines were drawn. There was no turning back. The city lights blurred behind Daniel as he trailed Victor's truck through Dallas. His heart hammered with rage, but his mind stayed sharp. He had to be careful. The stakes were no longer just his pain. They were the lives of his sons. The confrontation at the school had shattered the shadows. Victor knew. The clock was ticking. Daniel followed the truck to a gated community on the city's outskirts. Their home, once his, now a prison wrapped in luxury. Security cameras lined the perimeter. Every corner screamed surveillance. Daniel vanished into the darkness, retreating to a rented motel room, walls stained with forgotten stories of other lost souls. He pieced together the fragments: Victor's offshore accounts, falsified reports, military contacts, the orchestrated crash. But without undeniable proof, the system wouldn't help. The answer was Melissa. But Melissa was broken. That night, hidden in the shadows, Daniel watched her through the window. Empty eyes, quiet sobs, fear etched into every movement. She wasn't his wife anymore, but she wasn't free either. Ethan paced his bedroom, fists clenched, eyes red. Liam cried himself to sleep. Daniel's fists curled with helplessness. The man who once built skyscrapers was now just a ghost haunting the edges of his own life. But ghosts sometimes haunt back. The next morning, an anonymous package arrived. At Victor's doorstep, photographs, documents, whispers of the truth resurfacing. A warning. Victor's composure cracked. His calls to military contacts grew frantic. His threats to Melissa sharpened. The walls of lies were crumbling. But when the past comes knocking, it never leaves quietly. The night was suffocating, thick with storm clouds, thick with rage. Victor's paranoia erupted into fury. He stormed through the house, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. Melissa trembled beneath his words, years of fear boiling over. But tonight, something had changed. Ethan had seen the photographs. He'd pieced together whispers, fragments, forbidden questions. The man outside the school, the stranger, was no stranger at all. His father was alive. In the storm, Daniel moved like a shadow. His chest burned with urgency, the motel room's cracked mirror still reflecting his weathered face. A face ready for war. Armed with undeniable evidence. Files, audio recordings, photos. He crept toward the house, the rain masking his footsteps. But inside, chaos unfolded. Victor's threats escalated to violence. A shove, a slap. The air crackled with fear. But Ethan, no longer a helpless boy, stood between Victor and Melissa, trembling but defiant. His eyes met his mother's. Silent understanding passed between them. Enough. Daniel burst through the back door, the storm roaring behind him. Victor froze. Recognition and fury collided across his face. The two men, predator and survivor, locked eyes. "You should have stayed dead," Victor snarled, lunging. A brutal fight erupted. Fists shattered furniture, raw vengeance unleashed. Years of pain fueled every strike. Melissa grabbed the boys, pushing them behind her. Liam sobbed. Ethan stood frozen, watching the father he thought was gone, the monster they feared, the violence colliding. Victor's grip faltered. Daniel's fists connected with bone. But sirens howled in the distance. The neighbors had called. Time was running out. The truth was bleeding into the open. But not everyone would survive the night. The flashing blue lights painted the walls as police stormed the house. Blood pooled on the floor. Glass shards scattered across the living room. The aftermath of years of lies colliding with brutal reality. Victor, bruised and restrained, spat venom as officers dragged him away. His empire of manipulation collapsed under the weight of evidence Daniel had exposed. Financial records, falsified reports, whispers of the sabotage he orchestrated. But justice doesn't heal wounds. Melissa stood trembling, eyes hollow, holding Liam close. Her once lovable husband was a stranger. The man who saved them was the same ghost they buried years ago. Ethan's stare cut deepest. His young eyes, hardened by betrayal, flicked between Daniel and Melissa, the boy he once was. Gone. The news called Daniel a miracle, the man who returned from the dead. Reporters swarmed. Lawyers whispered. But headlines don't mend broken families. Daniel was alive, but his life? Gone. Victor faced charges, stripped of power, but the scars remained. Daniel visited his old home one last time. The walls, the memories, the quiet ghost of what could have been. His reflection in the glass showed the truth. Aged, battered, a survivor wearing the face of a stranger. Melissa couldn't forgive him for leaving, for surviving, for returning a shadow of the man she loved. The boys? Caught between blood and bitterness, Daniel walked away as the Texas sun rose, a silhouette fading into the streets. Just another forgotten soul, swallowed by the darkness of unfinished stories. He survived the fall. But some crashes leave. Damage no one escapes. The truth surfaced. But victory came soaked in loss. And for Daniel Cooper, there were no second chances. If this story moved you, follow us and turn on the bell. Here, we share raw, real stories, heartbreak, redemption, and the fight to rise again. Don't miss what's next.